This lesson is about a very cool feature of Python, which is used to create lists and is known as list comprehension. Lists without a doubt are most commonly used data structure in Python, and many times we need to create lists with some calculations. And list comprehension helps us doing that in much simple way. Let's see this case where we have a list of numbers defined as on line number 1 named as nums. Now I want to create another list having the values as squares of the numbers inside the list nums. For that I can proceed by creating an empty list, then I can iterate over the numbers of the list nums and I will append the squares of that number into the list square nums. Let's see the result. And these are the squares of the numbers inside the original list. Now I will do the same thing using the list comprehension, and that will take just one line of code. For that we will start by placing the square brackets, then inside that I will first write this expression. And after one space, I will write the for loop. And that's it. Let's see what this syntax shows. The square brackets show that this is a list. Then this shows that we want to iterate over some list elements. And we want this expression to be evaluated for each element of the list nums. And we get the final list. I know it looks a bit tricky at the beginning, but with a little practice you will get hold of it. And trust me, when you will practice it, you will always prefer to use list comprehension to create lists, but of course where applicable. To elaborate the difference between the simple approach and the list comprehension, see these two codes side by side and with different colors to represent different parts of the code in both programs. Let me explain the syntax one more time. We have the square brackets. We can first write the for loop on the list whose elements we want to take. Loop variable I is the list element in each iteration. Then before the loop, we have to write the expression we want to apply on the list element. So in list comprehension, we have to first write the expression and then the for loop all inside the square brackets in one line. Now let's see more examples. Here I want to generate a list of natural log of the numbers inside the list nums. I will import the log method from the math module. Now using the list comprehension, I will write the expression first as log of I. Note here that I am using I since I have in my mind that I will be using the loop variable I to iterate over the list nums. I will write that loop now. And that's it. Let's print the result. Now let's move to the next task. This is the task to take a positive integer from the user and create a list of all factors of that number. We did this task earlier using this approach of defining an empty list, then a for loop generating all integers from 1 to that entered number. Then we are checking if the loop variable I is factor of number n or not. If it is factor, we are appending that to the desired list. We should call it as list comprehension with filtering. Previously we were applying an expression on all elements of some list, but now we have to choose some of the elements, like if the number is a factor, only then we have to add that into the list. We can call it as filtering. Let's first see the output without the list comprehension. These are all factors of 30. Now I will do it with the list comprehension. I will start with the square brackets. I can first write the for loop to generate numbers from 1 to entered number n. Now if I write I here as the expression, it simply means that it will add I in the list. So essentially it will be a list of all integers from 1 to n. But I want only the numbers which are factor of n, and for that I will write the condition after the for loop. So what it means is that this condition will be applied on all iterations of the for loop, and if satisfied, only then the expression part will be executed and added to the list. Let's again enter 30, and this is the list of all factors of 30. Now let's see another example of list comprehension with filtering. Here we have a list nums with some numbers, and I want to generate another list as of the squares of the numbers of the nums, but of only those numbers which are even. Let's do it here. I'm writing the expression as I into I because again I have in my mind that I will be using the loop variable as I in the for loop. Here is the for loop. If I will stop here, it will generate a list of squares of all numbers inside the list nums. But I want squares of only the even numbers, so I will write the condition after the for loop. Let's see the result. And these are the squares of just the last 3 numbers of the list nums which were even. Squares of the first 2 are not added because they were not even. Now here we have another task. We have a list nums with few numbers, and I want to have a list of just the prime numbers from the nums list. Without the list comprehension, we can do it by creating an empty list, then iterating over the numbers of the nums list, and checking if the list element is prime or not by using our own created function isPrime, and if it returns true, then we are appending that list element into the list primes. So these 3 numbers were the prime numbers inside the list nums. Let's do it using the list comprehension. This expression will add all numbers of the nums list inside the primes list, but after this I should have the condition that the number I is a prime number. And we get the same result. Now let's do another task which involves nested list. The task is to generate a list having the sums of all of the inner lists of the list A. Without list comprehension, we can iterate over the list A. The loop variable sub will be the individual sublist or the inner list of the list A. So we can apply the sum function on that and can append that sum into the all sum list. We get this result which you can verify is the sum of the inner list. Now let's do it by list comprehension. I will first write the for loop. The loop variable sub is the inner list of the list A, so as the expression I can specify the sum of that inner list. Let's see that, and we have the same result. Now let's see the next example. Here information of a student is defined as a tuple. And then we have a list of 10 students named as all students. In the tuple, we have the first name, last name, registration number of the student, and the last element of the tuple is a list of courses he or she has registered. Now all students is a list of these tuples, and the task is to generate a list of registration number of all students who have the course CP in the list of their registered courses. We will do it using the list comprehension. I will iterate over the list all students, and the loop variable will be the tuple. But I want to unpack that tuple so that I get the individual elements inside the tuple. F is for the first name, L for the last name, R for the registration number, and S for the subjects list. Now see that we want to have the list of registration numbers of the students, and that is unpacked to variable R. So I will write R as the expression. If I will end it here, it will generate a list of registration number of all of the students. But I want the registration number of only those students who have registered in the course CP. So I must apply a filtering condition after the for loop. The courses detail of the student is in the courses list, and that is unpacked to variable S. That is a list, so I can simply apply the condition as CP in S. Let's see the result. And we have the registration number of 5 students. It includes the registration number 7, 8 and 9, and see here CP is there in the courses of these students. You can verify the other 2 as well. Now let's have another task from this scenario. I want to generate a list of full names of those students who have registered exactly 3 courses. Let's do it here. I will apply the for loop on all students list and unpack the student tuple as we did earlier. We don't have the full name variable as a whole, but we have the first name and the last name in loop variable F and L. So I can use those and can create the full name. I should place a space in between the first and the last name. We also have a condition that if the student has registered exactly 3 courses, so we should apply the condition accordingly. Let's see the result. And these are the full names of the students who have registered 3 courses. Let's just verify this last student, Kashif Latif. You can see he has registered exactly 3 courses. The next task is to generate a list of number of courses registered by each student. Again, I will have the for loop with unpacked tuples, and the number of courses is simply the length of the list S. We don't have any condition this time, so we are done. And these are the 10 numbers, which are the number of registered courses by each of the 10 students. Then there is another task from this scenario, but we will come to that at the end. Now in this task we have a list of numbers, and the task is to generate a list of single value tuples from this list, meaning that each number inside the nums list should become a tuple with that single value. I will iterate the nums list. I is the number inside the list. To make it a tuple, I will write in expression as a single value tuple with value I. This is how we define a single value tuple. Let's see the result. And these are the single value tuples as needed. Now we will see how we can incorporate the if-else condition in the list comprehension. We have used the if condition to filter out few elements of the list, but this is a different scenario. Let's see the task. It says to generate a list from another list of numbers as double of the number if the number is even and 3 times that number if the number is odd. Now the point is that we don't have to filter out any number from the list. We have to consider all numbers of the list, but the expression we want to apply on the number is different for the even number and different for the odd number. So the if-else condition will be applied on the expression part of the list comprehension. I will first do it without list comprehension. In loop iterations, we should apply the condition on the list element. If it is even, we will append the double of that into the list A. And else means the number is odd, so we will append 3 times of that number in the list A. So here you can see this 15 is 3 times 5, and for this 4, which is even number, the output is 8, which is 2 times 4. Now let's do it using the list comprehension. Let me write the for loop first. Now in the expression part, I will write an if-else statement. First, I have to write the expression which I want to evaluate when the condition will be true. Then I will write the else, and followed by that will write the expression I want to evaluate when the condition is false. Yes, this might look a bit complex at start, but you will get used to it quickly. You can say there is an if-else statement and an expression before that statement which corresponds to the if block, and an expression after the if-else statement which corresponds to the else block. Let's run it, and we get the same result. We had these 6 lines before, and with list comprehension we did that in just 1 line. Now let me add one string value in the nums list. If we run that, we have an error because we cannot apply the remainder VN operator on the string variable. So I should filter out any element inside the list nums which is not an integer. For that I will apply a condition, and as we saw earlier, the filtering condition is applied after the for loop. So here I will write if the type of I is int. And hence if it is not int, it will not be considered for the expression part of the list comprehension. And now we get the result. If I have a floating value, of course that will also get filtered out. We don't have the value corresponding to 6.3 and hello. Now let's see the cases to work with multiple iterables. I want to generate a list of 2 value tuples such that one value is picked from the list X and the other is picked from the list Y on corresponding locations. When we have to process multiple iterables in one for loop, there are a couple of ways. The first method is to iterate using the index of the list, because indices of both lists are same starting from 0 till the length of the list minus 1. I can use length of any list here with the assumption that both lists are of same size, so this I will be from 0 to 4 in this case. Now to create a tuple, I can use the parentheses for the tuple, and the first element will be the element from the list X at index I, and second element will be the element from list Y at the same index I. Let's see the result. And we have the desired output. Actually, there is a better way for such situation where we have to process multiple iterables in one for loop, and that is by using the zip function. Zip function zips together multiple iterables, and then we can process that zip object instead of processing through the indices. Now let's iterate over the zip object directly in the for loop. And here you can see, for example, this first element is the tuple 1, 2, where actually 1 is from list X and 2 is from list Y, and so on all other elements. Hence, the zip function zips together the multiple iterables and creates tuples for the corresponding elements of those iterables. So in such case, it is very simple now. The zip elements are already the required tuples, and hence we can use the list comprehension as so. And we have the same result. In fact, for this particular case, even we don't need the list comprehension. If we just convert the zip object to a list using the list constructor, we will actually get the desired result. However, if we have a different requirement, for example, we need to generate a list of inner list instead of inner tuples as this one, then we will have to use the list comprehension. This time I will iterate over the zip object. Its elements are tuples, so I will unpack those, and in the expression part, I will use those to create an inner list. There is another very good advantage of using the zip function. For example, here I am not using the zip function and iterating using the indices. Now suppose the size of both lists is not same. List X has one extra element. So this length of X will generate correct indices for the list X, but for the list Y it will go beyond the size of the list, and that will surely generate an error. However, if we are using the zip function, it will not generate the error because the zip function zips together the elements till the minimum number of the elements of the input iterables. The extra elements in other iterables are ignored. So the last inner list is 310. The one in the list X is not considered since there is no corresponding elements in the list Y. So we also saw the use of the zip function, which we can use in cases other than list comprehension. Now here again we have two lists X and Y, and we want to generate a list of tuples XY representing the XY points on XY plane, but only those points whose magnitude is less than or equal to 3. I will apply the for loop on the zip object of list X and Y. This will give the list of all XY points, but I have to apply the condition if the magnitude of the point is less than or equal to 3. X coordinate is at index 0 of the tuple and Y coordinate is at index 1. And we have only two such points. I personally don't like to use the indices most of the time, so here I could also do it by unpacking the tuples in the for loop. Then I will have to create the XY points as tuple like this. And in the condition I don't need the indices now. The X component is variable I and Y component is variable J. Just for a little more practice, now we have a list of XY points as tuples. And I want to generate a list of only the X coordinates and another list of only the Y coordinates. Basically, it is the opposite of what we were doing earlier. So I will iterate over the list points. Loop variable I is the inner tuple. For X coordinate, I just need the first element of that tuple. And we get this result. Again, instead of the index, I can also unpack the tuple in the for loop and directly use the first value. Similarly, for the list of Y coordinate, I can do it like this. Now we will see the scenario of nested list using the list comprehension. If we have this list of inner lists and we just want to create a flattened list from this nested list, without list comprehension we will use the nested for loop. This loop variable sub is the inner list of the list num list, so we need to apply another for loop on this sub list and we'll append the elements into the desired list. And now we have a simple list instead of the nested list. Now let's do it using the list comprehension. This for loop is on the num list and the loop variable sub is the inner list. So to apply the for loop on that, we will start the for loop immediately after it. And this num is the individual element inside the nested list. So we will use it in the expression part of the list comprehension. And we get the simple flat list. Now here we have two lists x and y and I want to create the xy points of all possibilities of x and y, meaning for one x with all values of y. So the total points will be 15. Now here I don't need the corresponding elements of list x and y, but for each x, I need to have all elements of y and hence I should use a nested for loop in the list comprehension. For each I in x, the next for loop will get executed. And here we have the desired result. Now we will consider the one last task on student scenario which we left earlier. It says that generate a list of all courses registered by all students, starting from all courses of one student to all courses of the last student. Let's apply the for loop on all students list as we did earlier. S is the course list. So next we can have a for loop to get the subjects inside the list S. And that we will add into the list. You can verify the result. Now see that here we have a simple list containing all subjects registered by each of the student. What if I want to have those list of the subjects as inner list of the final list? Well, for that I don't need to pick the individual subjects from the courses list. Instead, I can simply add the loop variable s directly here, which is a list of courses. And now you can see the output is a list, but having the inner list as registered courses of each student. Now what if I want to get the result same as we got this time, but I want to apply some method on the individual elements of the courses list. For example, I want to convert the names of all courses into uppercase letters. If we have a string variable, for example a equal to hello, we have a string method upper which we can apply on the string object and it will return another string with all letters in the uppercase. So now I want to convert the all subjects names to the uppercase. Let's first see how we can do it for one list. So if we have this list, I can use the list comprehension. The variable sub is the element of the list s, which is a string, and I can apply the upper method on that string. So here is the desired result. So this is something I want to do for each student inside the list, so I can put it here as the expression part. It means that for all elements of the list all students, I want to evaluate this expression which returns a list and hence the final result will be a list of the inner list. And we get this desired result where each subject name is converted into the uppercase. Now one last point before I end this lesson is what if we have a tuple with the numbers and we want to generate a list of squares of the numbers from this tuple. We can do it using the list comprehension. This for loop is being applied on the tuple this time. It is totally fine because the list comprehension means the end result will be a list which is specified as the square brackets, and we can have any iterable in the for loop to take the values from. It can be a list or a tuple or the other iterables like string, set and dictionary. However, what if instead of the final result as a list, if I want to get the final result as a tuple, so is there something like tuple comprehension? For that, let's change the square brackets to parentheses, which are used to specify a tuple. We don't have any error, but the output is quite strange. It is printed as some generator object. We will see the details about the generators at some later stage, but as of now, you should know that there is no tuple comprehension in Python. So that's all from this lesson. Thanks for watching.